Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where value is measured in resumes, job titles, and the price of your watch. But every now and then, something happens that shatters those illusions. Let me tell you about a woman. A millionaire built an empire, had a mansion so large her voice echoed through marble halls. And let me tell you about another woman, a housekeeper, no title, no spotlight, just a quiet presence in the background. And then there was the boy, 7 years old, autistic, diagnosed as nonverbal, 2 years without a word, until one day, everything changed. The boy hadn't spoken in 2 years. His silence was met with labels. Doctors called it a developmental delay. Specialists wrote reports. Experts gently told the mother to prepare for a life of limitations. They saw silence as a sentence, a final word, but the housekeeper saw something different. She didn't carry a degree or a clipboard. She carried a mop and a quiet strength. She didn't see a diagnosis. She saw a boy. Every day as she cleaned the house, she spoke to him, not in one language but many, French, Spanish, Italian. Her words weren't loud or demanding. They were soft, gentle, patient. She spoke as though she believed he could understand. She spoke as though his silence didn't define him, but protected something delicate inside. While others measured progress in milestones, she measured it in connection. She didn't teach with curriculum. She taught with presence. And then, one day, as the light streamed in through the window and the room was filled with quiet, he whispered a single word, "Hola." It was just a sound. But it wasn't just a sound, it was proof. Proof that he had been listening, that he had been processing, that something in her voice, in her persistence, had unlocked a door no one else had found. Silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes it's potential, held deep, buried under fear or trauma, waiting for the right moment to be drawn out. The world had given up on the boy, but one woman refused to, and that refusal changed everything. Her faith, quiet but fierce, became the bridge between silence and speech, between isolation and connection, between being unseen and being known. Because sometimes all it takes is one person who keeps speaking, believing the silence isn't the end. It's the beginning. Greatness doesn't always wear a badge, a title, or a tailored suit. Sometimes it wears gloves and carries a mop. The millionaire mother stormed in, face tight with judgment. "Why are you talking to my son?" she demanded. Her eyes didn't see a woman. They saw a uniform, and to her that uniform spoke of limits, not possibility, of servitude, not wisdom. She didn't ask the woman's name, didn't wonder who she was before the job. She assumed, like so many do, that status is truth. But what she failed to see was a past full of brilliance. That housekeeper, quiet, steady, and invisible to many, once stood behind podiums, not cleaning carts. She had earned a PhD from Columbia University, written 17 published studies on child psychology, changed the lives of 43 children who had been written off by doctors and teachers alike. Her words once moved minds, her research reshaped policies, and yet here she was, wiping spills and folding clothes, because life has no script. Life threw her curveballs, war, loss, illness. She lost everything but her will to survive. And when rent was due, and mouths needed feeding, she didn't lean on pride. She leaned on resilience, because dignity isn't in what you wear. It's in how you carry yourself when no one is applauding. So she spoke to that autistic boy not out of pity, but out of deep knowing. She understood his silence not as absence, but as waiting, waiting for the right voice, the right patience, the right connection. And she gave him that, not for money, not for recognition, but because that's who she was. Greatness isn't loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. Sometimes it whispers from the corners, changes lives in shadows, and wears a name tag that hides a legacy the world forgot. Empathy unlocks what expertise cannot. In a world where credentials are celebrated and diplomas are worshipped, 3 of the best neurologists, armed with the sharpest minds and the latest science, tried everything they knew. Scans, behavioral checklists, neurological assessments, speech development plans. But the boy remained silent. He remained distant, closed off from the world, tucked away in a quiet corner of his own mind. To the world, He was a puzzle no one could solve. To the experts, he was data. Another case that didn't respond. Then came the housekeeper. No lab coat, no framed degrees, no complicated jargon. She didn't need a clipboard or a stopwatch. She needed something far more rare. She needed empathy. She didn't speak at the boy. She spoke to him, softly, without pressure, without expectation, and most importantly, without judgment. She treated his silence not as defiance or disorder, but as a form of communication. A quiet plea to be seen, not examined, to be held, not handled. Children with special needs aren't broken machines waiting to be fixed. They're whole souls longing to be understood. This housekeeper didn't try to diagnose him. She tried to know him. She listened, even when there were no words. She gave him space to feel safe. She gave him time to be ready. And most of all, she gave him dignity. That boy didn't need another prescription. He needed presence. Not more therapy, but trust. And in that simple exchange of patience and respect, something remarkable happened. One day he opened his mouth and language found its way out. Not because he was pushed, but because he was finally seen. That wasn't a breakthrough of medicine. That was the miracle of empathy. And in that miracle, the silence was no longer a prison. It became a doorway. Sometimes, the revolution doesn't come with applause. It doesn't arrive in bright offices or high-rise boardrooms. Sometimes it starts in a place most people overlook. A dimly lit basement, where hope flickers like a candle. She didn't wear a title. No degrees on her wall. No shiny credentials. She had no assistance, no funding, no platform. But what she did have was belief. Unyielding, unshakable belief that the boy everyone had given up on was still in there, waiting. While the rest of the house entertained guests and poured wine, she sat on the basement floor with flashcards, songs, and picture books. French, Spanish, German, Arabic, Japanese, Italian. She rotated them all gently, patiently. No pressure, just presence. The boy didn't speak back at first, but she kept going, day after day, word after word. She didn't demand language. She offered connection. And then, something happened. It began with a hum. Then a syllable, then a phrase. Bonjour. Gracias. Why Jates? It wasn't random. It was fluent, thoughtful, real. Within weeks, he was not just speaking. He was singing in different tongues, telling jokes, asking questions. The house that once echoed with silence now rang with music and meaning. And yet, no one had noticed where it all began. They didn't see the revolution unfolding downstairs because they were too busy looking up. But sometimes the greatest movements don't make noise at first. Sometimes the most powerful change doesn't need a stage. It just needs someone who won't give up. That woman wasn't a therapist or a specialist. She was a housekeeper with heart, but she saw the boy. She saw what no expert report could. And that belief, born in the quiet, reshaped a future. Because sometimes the greatest revolutions begin in the quietest corners. What you build in others is the only legacy that lasts 6 months later. The boy stood on stage, speaking at international conferences. He wasn't just reciting lines. He was telling stories, cracking jokes in multiple languages, inspiring other children and parents across the world. Cameras flashed, crowds stood, but he kept looking for one face in the audience. The one who believed in him before anyone else did. The mother, once driven by fear and frustration, had been transformed by witnessing her son's awakening. She shut down her chain of luxury spas and opened a foundation dedicated to supporting neurodivergent children across the country. Her vision wasn't built in boardrooms. It was born in the kitchen, watching her son laugh for the first time in years. And the housekeeper, the world no longer called her by her first name in passing. She was Dr. Lanna Santos now, author of 2 best-selling books on language acquisition in autistic children, professor at a leading university, interviewed, quoted, respected. But when people asked her about her greatest reward, it wasn't the accolades. It was a note from the boy she once whispered to while scrubbing floors. It read, "Miss Lanna didn't break the glass box I was trapped in. She showed me there was never a box." That's legacy. That's leadership. That's the kind of impact that doesn't fit on a resume or inside a bank vault. It lives in the hearts you unlock, the futures you rewrite, the dignity you restore. So if you take one thing with you today, let it be this. There are people all around you, sweeping your floors, scanning your groceries, waiting tables, holding keys you didn't even know existed. Respect them. See them, listen to them, because the greatest revolutions, they don't start from power, they rise from belief,